Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special lecture. Tonight, we're going to take some time and we're going to talk about your midterm writing assignment. And I know that a lot of you get anxiety when it comes to writing assignments or research papers or case studies, but don't. I'm going to walk you through the APA format. I'm going to show you a couple of example papers so you can see what the format actually looks like. I'm going to walk you through how to do your reference page and how to do in-text citations. And then finally, I'm going to log into your Canvas shell or a Canvas shell and show you where you're going to find your midterm writing assignment and just how easy it's going to be. So don't panic, but let's go ahead and jump right into this particular lecture. So how to write a paper. Well, we're going to start off with why you need to cite your sources. Well, there are several reasons, but I have four really important things that I want to point out to you. The first one, of course, is to avoid this thing called plagiarism, and that can come in many forms, but to kind of summarize it, it's basically taking somebody else's information, putting it in your research project, your essay, your case study, without acknowledging where the information came from or who the information came from. And that kind of leads us into the next one, discussing the importance of giving credit appropriately. So it is important that if you're going to take some information from another source or another individual, that you give them credit for that particular information. And a lot of issues that I find with some of the case studies and some of the papers that I look at is the fact that students are afraid to basically do what they call an in-text citation because they think they should know this information just off the top of their head and they shouldn't have to get it from someone else. Well, you can get rid of that thought process altogether, because any good research paper, case study, essay is going to glean information from other individuals. That's why you have a reference page, and you're gonna take some of that information to support and add to your awesome essay. So to kind of come all the way back around, give credit appropriately. And the third reason is to advance the knowledge base. And because everyone, not just you, those that had written documents that you may have looked at for your particular essay to add some of that information in, they did the same thing you did, and they collected information from other individuals. And this helps everybody advance the knowledge base, because now we have this group of references, if you will, to where we can apply them to a certain topic. So it really, at the end of the day, it's going to make research easier for future scholars, because they're going to look at your paper and they're going to say, oh, look, they've got this information from here. And then that particular author can go there, just like you did. And hopefully that kind of all makes sense. So the big four: avoid plagiarism, give credit appropriately, advance the knowledge base for everybody involved, and of course, make research easier for future scholars that might be writing about something similar or exact to what you are writing about. And I hope that makes sense. So why then do we even use APA? Why don't we use a different style that we're used to? Because maybe some of you haven't written in the APA format. Well, APA style is typically most commonly used to cite sources within the social sciences. And you're talking about, things like, or topics like geography, history, economics, psychology, sociology, political science, anthropology, philosophy, and also criminal law, and criminology. So we fall underneath that umbrella, and that is one of the reasons that we use APA. So with that being said, when do I cite sources? Well, there are several different instances when you will want to do this, but I want to kind of go over the big three. The first would be when you use a direct quote. And if you're following along, which I hope you are, we're at the top right here. And here's an example of a direct quote citation. And when you use a direct quote, you're also going to add in the page number, and we'll get into a little bit more detail in just a moment. But here you have the author, Schroep, and the year of the publication, 2009. And you're going to say it like this: Schroep 2009 reports that subjects in the study, quote, should have been fully informed of the possible negative effects, end quote, page 253. So when you use a quote, you're going to put a page number. If you're just going to paraphrase, you can do it like this: Schroep 2009, author's last name, publication year, further demonstrates the potential dangers and biases in the elimination of stem cell research, which with the page number as well. Now, if you're just going to summarize, meaning that you might have a lot of information and you're going to use some of your own thoughts or change some words around, if you will, but you're going to cut that down. You're not going to use a quote. You're going to kind of reword it because you don't want all of the information. You would say it like this: in the view of one critic, Schroep, 2009, because you're still using the person's thought or information even though you reworded it. Does that make sense? The subjects were placed in more danger than is acceptable in this type of experiment. Well, let's get into it a little bit deeper. What is a direct quote? Well, a direct quote is a group of words or sentences that you copy word for word and you use as part of your written assignment, your essay, your case study, your research paper. So an example of a direct quote would be down here. Quote, the scientific method has well-known and important advantages, end quote. The author's last name, the publication year, and the page number. That's one format, and I'll show you a couple of different ones as we go through this. Well, then what is a summary? So if your source is unnecessarily detailed, you may want to put some of that detailed information entirely in your own words. You're still taking the thought because you may not know the information, so you're using somebody else's information, but you're going to kind of reword it because you don't want to use all of that. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm pretty sure it does. So the example that we'll look at, student test scores tend to correlate strongly with the amount of time spent studying. Now, this originally was a very wordy paragraph, but it was kind of cut down. But at the end of the day, we didn't know the outcome here, that student test scores tend to correlate strongly with the amount of time. So we're still using somebody else's information. Therefore, we are going to give credit to the person that wrote it. Does that make sense? So it'll be the author's last name and the year of the publication. So here it's Marigold, and you'll put the comma, 2006. Now, this will come a little bit more evident to everybody. You'll understand it more when I get to the end of the lecture and I show you a couple of actual papers. So don't panic, we're going to get there. But now let's kind of move back. What's a paraphrase? So this is the third of the three that we were talking about. Well, a paraphrase is basically restating a section of text in your own words. And now I want to move into the part that most students have a challenge with. And that is this thing called in-text citations. So a lot of students will write a fantastic essay or a great case study or an awesome research project, and they have the cover page, the title page, and they have the abstract, and they have a reference page, and it's all great, but they don't cite their information in the text, in the narrative, the meat of the essay. And again, I'll show you what that looks like. So let's take a moment and look at what an in-text citation is or encompasses. So there are basically three components of an in-text citation. First, you have the author or the author's last names. So there can be more than one, and I'll show you how to do that. I will also show you how to do your reference page. So again, don't panic with all this. The second is the year the source was published. And then the third is a page number, but only if you're using direct quotes. So let's look at a couple of examples that I've laid out for you. So these are examples of in-text citations, meaning it's in all the text. That's why they call it in-text. So here, the author, the last name, the publication date. So the statement that we're going to make here is Werner, 2009, noted that interviews are very common when conducting research. The next example I give you would be a quote. Same format, if you will. So Werner, the last name, the year of publication, noted that, quote, the most common form of interview is the person-to-person encounter, end quote, page 71. Or you can do it in this particular format, and this is a quote as well. Consider that, quote, the most common form of interview is the person-to-person encounter, end quote, author's last name, publication year, page number. So I hope this is helping you out. But what if you have more than one author? Well, here's a couple of examples to show you as well. So we have Pascarella and Terenzini, two authors, okay? Year of publication, report that stress contributes to a variety of disorders. But what about if we use a quotation? Same thing, but we're going to add the page number. So the same thing. So you put the quote in. It is reported that, quote, stress is the #1 contributor to many disorders, end quote. Pascarella, and I prefer the and, but you can do this with the symbol, but I do prefer the and. Terenzini, comma, 2007, comma, page 42. So hopefully this kind of helps you understand what an in-text citation looks like, but I'll show you an exact one in just a second. So let me move past this here. So how do we, when we talk about in-text citations, how do we kind of blend our sources? And how do we blend those sources by using active or even past tense verbs? So I kind of gave you some suggestions here. And we'll go through these one at a time, but we'll do it kind of quickly. So a couple of ideas. It has been reported that, according to, these are ways to lead in, if you will, or blend the source, the in-text citation, that source, using both active and past tense verb. A recent study suggests, several researchers note that, many findings point to the fact that. So this is just kind of helping you blend in those sources if you're looking for a way to do that, to make it kind of smooth, like a transition, if you will. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this next little section because I want to get to the reference page, but I wanted to talk briefly about the title page. So when you do your essay, there's going to be a couple of different components. The first will be the title page. And typically for APA, you're going to have a running header at the top. And then you're going to have kind of the title itself and some other information. So you'll have the name of the essay, your name. You can put criminal justice or administration of justice. You can have my name and the date. Please make sure that if nothing else is on there, that your name is on there. Because if you just have my name, that's great, but I won't be able to grade it because it won't have your name. So this also needs to be double spaced and centered in the middle of the page, and the running header goes at the top. And don't panic on this header. I'll show you what one looks like. And then again, the first page of the APA body, at the top of the page, you'll have the page number, if you will, in the header area, and typically 1 inch margins on both sides. Don't make your margins too large. Okay, so keep it at the maximum 1 inch. But again, I'll show you an example. So now let's kind of talk about reference page entries, like how do I do my reference page? So again, I talked about the pieces of this essay or this case study or research project. You'll have the face page, the title page. You'll have a short abstract, and I'll show you what one looks like when we get to the end of this. Then you'll have the essay. That's 3 pages of text. You can write more, but not less. Okay, so title page, abstract, 3 pages of information, and then your reference page. And just to let you know, the title page, the abstract, and the reference page, they don't count towards the 3 pages. So you still need 3. But how do we do the reference page? Well, first you want to determine the nature of the source. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some examples. So we'll look at one from a book or from a magazine or even from a website, because typically a lot of you will get your information from an online article, an online news article, or perhaps even a website. So I'll walk you through some examples. Now, I've kind of gone a little bit overboard, but this helped me. What I've done is I've color-coded the references, each particular piece or bit of information, and I've made a little reference down here to what all of this is. So let me show you what I mean. So in the blue, we have the author's information, and here we're looking at a book. So this will be a reference from a book. So I've got the author in blue, the date of publication in red, the title of the book in the gray, the city of the publisher in the purple, and then the publisher in gold. So if you take this information as the key and you look up here, you can see the last name and the first initial. You can do a middle initial if you want, but you do need the first initial. So Borg, M or MJ, that's the author. Next is the date of publication, 2006. Next is the title of the book. Next is the city of the publisher. And last is the publisher. That's how you do a reference for a book. Well, what else do we have? How about a journal article? So I've broken it down the exact same way. I've color-coded it for you. Here's an example from a chapter in an edited book, which a lot of you may or may not use, but let me get to one right here, an internet site. So I've color-coded this as well, so this will make it simple. So the internet site, so the title of the internet site is in blue, The Endangered Human. Date of publication, well, there wasn't one, so you can put ND, no date. The date you accessed the site, retrieved October 6, 2007, and then the URL, which is the web address from www.ecology.com. Now, when you cut and paste these, the web address, just take the name of the web address. You don't need all the other garbage that kind of is at the end of it. This is the website URL, not a specific page within the website. Okay, so sometimes you get a URL that is going to look, it's going to have 5 lines on it. Well, you can cut that down and you just want the main website URL. Okay, now what about like an interview? And this is kind of a special case, but sometimes if you're going to interview somebody and you're going to take that information and put it in your research project, okay, how do you cite that? Well, typically personal communications like interviews, they don't have entries in a reference list per se. So to cite in text and email or other communication by clarifying the person's name, type of communication, and date. So here's an example, and I know that sounds confusing, but I broke it down for an example for a personal interview. The person's last name, their first initial, the personal interview, that's what you did, and then the date that you did the interview. So hopefully that makes sense, and that will help you if you're going to add personal communication to it. So what does it really kind of look like when we do a reference then? Well, if we look at a couple of them here, okay, these are some examples of how references tend to look. And here's one from, again, from a website. Okay, here's another from a website. So these are just examples from electronic sources that you can cite. So what are some helpful hints then? And I'm going to get to the part about showing you some better examples in just a moment, but let me give you some helpful hints. Well, first, check the index or the table of contents of the APA manual or your grammar handbook if you have one. Or you can consult the Writing Center at MSJC, and all the campuses have. San Jacinto campus has a writing center in the library, and Menifee does as well. You can also consult the online writing lab at OWL of Purdue University at the following URL, which is the web address here. You can cut and paste this into your browser bar, and it will take you there. And it is a great resource, not just for APA, but for other formats as well. And then, of course, you can follow the general logic of APA style if you get stuck. And a couple of other resources that you can look at. There is an APA manual that's published. Again, a couple of other APA websites where you could go to. But the online writing lab at OWL Purdue is extremely informative. And this is what it would look like. So I have a link up here, and actually it is active. And you can click on that link and you can go to this page. And as you can see, it'll talk about APA style, overview and online workshops and formatting. And it will help you if you need some help. And then, of course, again, just to mention, don't forget about the writing labs. So for examples to help you kind of not stress out, if you will, I'm going to post an example paper on, I know it says Blackboard here, it's Canvas. So make sure that you take the time to read it, and it will help you as well. And I'm also going to kind of move now into what we call a rubric to show you how the grades are done and what I'm looking for. So if you look at this rubric, and it's also posted in your Canvas shell, this is kind of how I'm going to grade. And these are point totals across the top, and these are the categories that I'm looking at. Now, they're all important, but your references are important. The content for me is the most important. And if you look at some examples in content, let's look at the very low end. The paper lacks at most the most basic level of ideas and support to address the topic. So, I mean, if you end up around there, you're going to get 1 or 2 points. If you're up at the top, it's going to be the paper contains a overwhelming or, majority of high quality thought-provoking ideas, etc. So these are, again, the grading areas. Now, one thing of note, I know that it does say right here, writing skills, grammar, spelling, etc. I'm not going to really get on everybody too much for spelling. I'm going to make some notations on your papers and maybe give you some feedback. But a lot of times I'm really looking for the appropriate format, the statement, or the support or argument or conclusion, the overall content of the paper. Did you address all the areas that I wanted you to address? And then finally, your references. So that's just kind of an overview of the rubric. Okay, now with that being said, I wanted to show you a couple of examples of a paper. So here's an example of a paper that is an actual essay done by a former student. And as you can see at the top, it has the running header. And what they're doing here is the Maryland versus King case. And some of you may actually be doing this. So I'm not going to show you all of it, but I wanted to show you what it looks like, because I think this will put you at ease, because we've discussed it, but sometimes visually looking at it will help. So we've got the running header. And then remember, we talked about on the face page in the center here, she has case study of Maryland versus King. She has her name, the course, and then the college. You can put my name on there if you want, or you don't have to. Now that's one page. Now remember, this page doesn't count towards the page total. And here's the header, again at the top, okay, and then she has the page number, and then she has an abstract. And basically what an abstract is, and typically this is required in APA papers, is it's a very short, like a small paragraph summary of what the paper is going to address. And the reason for an abstract is so that an individual doesn't have to read an entire research paper and figure out that's not what they were looking for. The abstract will also have some key words. And if you look down here, Fourth Amendment, DNA, balance test. So I can just glance at those keywords and figure out these are some of the highlights or what's going to be in there. So let's look at her abstract. A person's DNA is currently seen as their property, not merely chromosomes that compose their genetic makeup. In the media, true crime documentaries sometimes depict how law enforcement officers have to stealthily obtain a suspect's DNA, or news coverage of DNA evidence exonerating innocent convicts. Forensic evidence has become more accurate and necessary in court cases. In the appellate case, King versus Maryland, the Supreme Court decided whether it is unconstitutional for law enforcement personnel to obtain a DNA sample of an arrestee of a serious felony and insert that sample into a state criminal database without a warrant. So basically, that's kind of a summary. The end is the real fact of the case. This Maryland versus King case is going to cover whether or not law enforcement can legally take a sample from someone and put it into a database. So that way I don't have to read the entire essay to figure out what it's about. So again, a very short paragraph with a couple of keywords. And then she goes into her essay and she starts talking about it. Now, remember we saw the in-text citations. Look at this example. The appellate case of Maryland versus King 2013. This is going to be referenced on her reference page. Does that make sense? And if you go down even further, look how she says this. Alonzo J. King Jr. was arrested on April 2009 for menacing the public with a shotgun and was subsequently charged with first and second degree assault. K 2014. This tells me this right here is where she got this information. Does that make sense? Because you didn't know this just off the top of your head. This isn't common knowledge. So in order to support and not plagiarize, if you will, she's giving credit for this author for this content. So I'm hoping that that kind of makes sense to everybody. And as you go through, you'll see other citations. And you can never really cite too much. I would try to avoid using too many quotes, but you can still use several quotes, but don't use too many. But as you go through this paper, you'll see that she has different citations or different references. And here she got this one here with no date. Okay, so I mean different ones. And I'm just kind of pointing them out to you as you go through. Here is another citation. So she's got them at the start, she's got them at the end of her sentences, she's got 3 or 4 different references as we kind of go through here, and you can see what this looks like. And then we get to the end, and she has her different references. Remember, K was one we saw, Maryland versus King with no date. We saw that. Okay. We saw this one here. We saw Thompson. We saw Supreme Court. And that's what her paper looks like. So again, I'm not going to let you read the entire thing, but I wanted to show you the structure of the paper. Face page, running header at the top, the title in the middle, the abstract part, the meat of the essay, 3 pages, everybody. Okay, 3 entire pages. And then your last page will be your reference page. Now, I only need 2 references. You can do more. You can always do more. But I wanted to make sure that you understand exactly what I require. Here's an example that I actually have posted in Canvas that you can look at. So this is a paper on how to write a paper. So again, I put in here, here's the center. This is the title page, so the exact title of your paper. You can put Administration of Justice, Criminal Law, whatever the course is. Your first and last name, and Mount San Jacinto College. You can put my name in there if you want. Remember, we have the little header at the top, and then we have an abstract. And remember, it's a brief summary of the contents of the written article, okay, with some keywords. So again, a separate page. If it ends up bleeding over onto the same page as your actual essay, that's okay, but try to keep it on a separate page. And then here, again, this is the main part of your text. It's got the header and the page number at the top. And I will talk about how to, how you're going to write your paper. And I even put some citations in there for you. But read through this so you can get a better understanding on how it goes. And then, of course, at the very end, you're going to put some citations in there because, of course, you want your reference page. So here's your reference at the back. Again, I know this looks like a lot of difficult stuff, but if you go back to the other research paper that I showed you, it's really not that difficult. So hopefully you seeing this helps you out a little bit. Now, finally, before we're done, I wanted to show you, now this is the instructor view, so it probably is going to look a little bit different on your end. It might be a folder that you need to open, but inside that folder, so we're in your Canvas shell in the module area, okay? And the module area is going to have a lot of information. But when you go down to the middle, there's going to be a module titled Midterm Essay. Now, if you've done your syllabus review already, which I'm sure you have, remember all the modules are done weekly. The only information that's not within these weekly modules is going to be the midterm essay. It has its own. And in this module is going to be your assignment that'll tell you what you're going to write about and some specifics on the essay itself. You'll have a audio version of the APA outline, which is kind of what we just did. That will be there if you want to listen to it again. I'll just post the PowerPoint slides as well, so if you don't want to hear my voice, you can just look at the slides. I'll also post the example paper, the writing rubric, and then finally, and I'm going to go to this one really quick, how to upload your paper. So this is kind of a very quick set of instructions or schematic to show you how to upload your paper. It's actually very easy. Now remember, one last thing, when submitting your paper, it needs to be in Microsoft Word. Don't put it in some other word processing format because chances are I may not be able to open it. And if I can't open it, I can't read it. And if I can't read it, I can't grade it. In addition, do not send the paper or upload it through a third-party area like Google Docs or something similar because your paper won't upload. It needs to be a separate attachment that's uploaded into Canvas. If you do write it in another format or word processing format, like let's say Word Perfect or something different, PDF the document and then upload it as a separate file. Chances are I can read the PDF, But if you just upload it again in something other than Microsoft Word, and especially if you put it in through a third-party thing like Google Docs or something, I'm not going to be able to open it. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Okay, so with that being said, that's a quick walkthrough on the APA format, the importance of in-text citations, because I have to tell you, and I don't know if I mentioned this, that the #1 challenge that I see when it comes to research projects or essays is that the papers are typically great, but the writer will not cite their references in the text. So I'm hoping that this helps you get past that. So with that being said, that's going to conclude our special lecture on your midterm writing assignment. Until next time.